It is November 17th, 2025, and we are back. Y'all, it has been a weekend here. I was sick, my air conditioning went out, and yes, even though it's November, we are still relying heavily on the AC here in Texas because it is still hot outside. But grateful to say that everything is fixed. I'm feeling better. I'm happy to be back. And also happy to get into today's conversation because there is a lot going on in the world. We touched on the fact that right now the US is really gearing up for something when it comes to Venezuela. Or are they? I mean, Trump is over here saying he's ready for discussions. Does he actually mean that? Or is that just yet another smokescreen as he is preparing for an attack? We also talked about the current situation in Ukraine as you have Zelensky all over the place, right? He's heard of this corruption scandal. Now he's got to sign as many deals as he can. And then we got into what's going on with the Epstein files because there is a really big foreign policy angle to this that I think is being missed by so many people in the mainstream media, right? They want to talk about all of the gossip, all of the salacious, horrific details, but they don't really get into just how much blackmail is at play here and how much of it involves the United States' good buddy Israel and what that means for US foreign policy. So we got into all of that and more with a special guest earlier today. So let's take a listen to that conversation now. Joining me now to discuss is Sarah Bils, an independent journalist, U.S. Navy veteran, and co-founder of DD Geopolitics. Sarah, thanks so much for taking the time to join me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you back on the show. Now, I want to get your take on the latest here, as I know that the USS Gerald Ford has arrived in the Caribbean. U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth has announced Operation Southern Spear, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio has declared that Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro is the leader of an alleged drug cartel, which the State Department intends to designate as a foreign terrorist organization. So, how do you view the buildup here all around Venezuela, and where do you think we're headed?
Well, I kind of was wrestling, and I don't want to do any spoilers or get ahead of us, but with wrestling with what is a distraction from the other. Almost always when you see a military operation, it's a distraction for something, especially when you can't really make heads or tails of the cause or the motivation. So I actually thought that Venezuela was going to be the distraction for the Epstein files, and there was sort of this race against the two, and the Epstein files wound up winning. The latest news on Venezuela looks like they're toying with the idea of talks or even backing off. There's been a lot of media in the West that has said things like Maduro is open to negotiations or Maduro has made offers. Now, I don't know about the validity of those reports, but whether they're fake or not, they're going into Western media for a reason because people are cool. People are very cool on the idea of war with Venezuela. And I think Trump knows that with his approval rating lower than 30%, I think it might be to the 40%, but it's the lowest it's ever been. And trying to float a few popular opinion balloons and kind of see, does this Venezuelan war go over that well? And last night he was kind of talking about getting back into negotiations. And I said, this is the sign that he might be backing off of this a little bit, which is comforting, but it's also aggravating because so much money was spent just to move those assets and create that pressure on Maduro that probably was completely unnecessary and was more about saber rattling and sort of ego measuring and things like that. So that's a little aggravating, but I'd rather waste money than have a war. So I don't know. I'm thinking that they're hesitating, very much hesitating. Hemming and hawing. I don't think they really have a plan. So we're all expecting it. So I can't even predict the timeline. I think I'm cautiously optimistic, hoping they'll back away from this idea in general.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up because I did see those comments that Trump made that he says, oh, we may be having some discussions with Maduro and that they would like to talk. And it seems like, I believe just a month ago when he had Zelensky in town, that's when he was saying, oh, the time for talks is over, right? Yeah, Maduro's doing everything he can to try to work with us, but it's too late. And I'm looking at this situation, and I know we've been getting the reports, right, that there has been a lot of pressure trying to get members of Maduro's military to turn on him, or trying to get even his own personal pilot to
Yep.
turn on him and turn him in. So if none of that's working, and yeah, they spend all this money, they send all this metal out there to the Caribbean, and then they kind of look around and go, okay, we don't really have a plan here for what this is going to look like. I mean, if the US did go forward with this, would we be looking at kind of another endless war here? Because it seems like the US isn't really aware of what they're fully getting into.
I agree. I don't think that the intel's very good with Venezuela. All of our attempts to overthrow or infiltrate Venezuela have been unsuccessful. The last successful operation we had was when we overthrew Chavez, who was reinstated within the next 48 hours by the people anyway. These are very popular leaders. Venezuela has all their leaders for the last 3 decades have had very popular support, large amounts of popular support. I think that the fact that they couldn't find a general to defect, the pilot wouldn't do it for what was it, $50 million? That says a lot. I think the United States is kind of realizing what they're up against, and it's going to be a lot of death required if you even get to the idea of ousting Maduro. And with the approval ratings the way they are, and with public opinion about the genocide in Gaza, I just don't think that the visuals of civilians down now in South America, even closer to us in our backyard, dying by the hundreds or even thousands. So I think that they're kind of realizing and I mean, I've said it before, even Maduro says, maybe he watches me, but I said, they go in there, it's going to make Vietnam look like a picnic. And I think about 2 weeks ago, Maduro says, if they want another Vietnam, tell them to come. And I think that it'll be a lot like Vietnam, maybe even worse. Maybe not as bad as terms as in like crudeness and how like horrific the injuries and some of the weaponry was in Vietnam. But I think that the same sort of rumble in the jungle vibe with sort of Americans not really knowing what they're doing or getting into, I think it'll be the same sort of idea.
Yeah, and it does seem that way when you look at the US and you go, okay, do you know what you're getting into, right? The Venezuelan people have made it clear time and time again that they do not want a US puppet running their country. They may not fully agree with everything that Maduro stands for, everything he does, but they're still continuing to back him. And when you look at the US military capabilities, that's another thing that's interesting here, right? Because you get the world's largest aircraft carrier out there, and sure, they've been killing dozens of people kind of at random in the Caribbean over the last few weeks, claiming that they're targeting alleged drug traffickers. But when you look at what the US military is actually capable of here, while also weighing all of the other wars and conflicts that we're a part of, how do you see it when it comes to a possible war with Venezuela?
Venezuela is not like the Middle East. This is going to require amphibious landings, which means marine boots on the ground. This is a dense jungle, and Venezuela is enormous. Enormous. They have a large band of bases and stuff at the very north along the coast, and then you just have jungle. There's millions of militia members. Millions, not, oh God, I think there's like 7 million or something. You're going to go combing through the jungles of Venezuela. You're not going to be able to do it with carpet bombing or strafing or anything like that. People are going to have to go in on the ground. And the idea of putting Marines on the ground in Venezuela, again, it's not like the Middle East. It's completely different terrain. You're going to need more special forces. I can't see a strategy for going into Venezuela. Especially not with this admin and with the condition of our military. We're not in the condition to go boots on the ground, and just bombing Venezuela is actually probably going to do more harm than good to the United States. And so I just don't think that I think that they're kind of realizing that this is sort of a lost cause.
Yeah, I hope so, right? You look at them and you go, okay, can you figure this out now before we get into a
Yeah,
full-on war here? That would be great.
I think they're testing a lot of the waters. We saw them test this past weekend with Mexico. I think that was another testing of the waters. Can we get Claudia Sheinbaum out, or can we get her kind of on her back foot? Because she backs up Maduro. She thinks what's happening to Maduro is completely wrong. I don't want to get into too much detail, but it's very clear that the protests in Mexico were just astroturfed, sort of color revolution vibes. And so they're doing those kinds of things and seeing if they can go after his sort of allies in the region. They've already tried going after Gustavo Petro, and these options aren't really working either. So you can see that they're trying to like kind of poke around Venezuela, weaken it a little bit, which tells me that they're still open to negotiations even now. So
Yeah, I hope they are, and I hope that they actually do pursue talks there. And now, as that is happening, you also have the situation in Ukraine, which we're, of course, continuing to follow. You have the US still propping up the Kiev regime, still fueling the war overall. And you have Zelensky having a very rough week after the Western backed Nabu sold out members of his inner circle in a $100 million energy corruption scheme. All of this as Russia is, of course, making significant gains, not just in terms of territory, but also in terms of wearing down Kiev's defensive lines altogether. So, how do you view the current state of the war in Ukraine?
is a corruption scandal really going to take out Zelensky when we have what's going on in our country? You think that our country, or even Great Britain, or even like Britain, is going to put down what they're doing and say, you know what, we've got to tackle corruption in Ukraine? So I don't think so. I mean, if things were normal right now, I think this would be a huge story and a huge scandal. This is tremendous. This is actually, and even so, this is only the second largest. So there's an even larger scandal back in 2023, and if you don't include the Panama Papers, so those were 2021. But this is an enormous scandal. The person that was involved in this scandal was also involved in the drone scandal, which made off with $40 million. Chris went to the front, and Kursk, my co-host, and he talked to Ukrainian POWs, and they said they don't see any Western weapons. They're all being sold to terrorists in Africa. Israel's buying a lot of them. So Qatar, they're going to Syria, it's that kind of stuff. So yeah, they're being sold by these politicians and stuff that's coming in from the United States. And Marco Rubio even indicated that he knows it's either getting destroyed or sold. He said it's all getting destroyed before he even gets there. Destroyed. Right.
Yeah, you look at this and you're like, okay.
A lot of it does get destroyed, perhaps to Russia, but come on. They're making out like bandits. They're making so much money, hand over fist. They've found safes just filled with US dollars. They're not using, how do you even say Ravina, however you say the Ukrainian money, but it's crazy. It's obscene. They're all vacationing in Cyprus, Israel. But I mean, who do you convince to care about it? What do you say? Marjorie Taylor Greene, I know you're busy with Epstein, but could you take a look at Zelensky? You're like, what? But so yeah, and it's our money, just more of our money gone to OnlyFans girls and Ukrainian politicians. It's really, it's a joke, but it's really sad. It's really sad, especially given the state that Ukraine is in. Then you look further into the scandal and who it actually hurt. It hurt the energy sector, which their energy sector is already on like one leg, if that. And Russia, in their, I guess, cruelty, or maybe it's just wartime strategy, has been absolutely devastating their energy infrastructure. So there's nothing, the money's gone. There's not going to be any energy infrastructure repair. So you'll continue to see pipelines blown up by the Ukrainians in retaliation, things like that. So it's a big scandal that has a potential to reverberate in a lot of ways, but I just don't think the West has the capacity to even think about dealing with it right now with what's going on.
Yeah, and it is interesting when you talk about corruption in Ukraine. It's like the West, they used to acknowledge it, but then came 2022, then came the war with Russia, and they were like, no, they fixed everything. Like, don't worry about it. Zelensky is going after all these people for corruption when really he's just silencing dissent. And then you look at Zelensky, and I'm curious to see if there is a push to get him out of office. Right now, it seems like he's still busy signing on to new deals like his life depends on it. I mean, he's in Greece signing an agreement to supply LNG from the US. Then he's off to France with reports that they are signing on to an agreement that is supposed to give Kiev 100 French fighter jets over the next decade. So how do you see, I know all of these, how do you see the deals that are being made, right? A lot of promises, not exactly a lot of follow-up just yet.
I mean, Orban said it best today. He said, this is like giving an alcoholic another case of vodka. That's what he said today to Ursula von der Leyen. He said, this is something like giving a case of vodka to an alcoholic. What are we doing? And I think that's what it is. It's just Zelensky trying to like kind of, I'm still in it. I'm still in it to win it. Look, I'm still doing the legwork to get this stuff done. I still need patriots. I mean, those are MOUs with France. I'm sure they'll never come to fruition. It's just more show. What's the dog and pony show? More of that kind of thing, I think. And Zelensky's is desperate to keep himself useful and looking presidential. So anything for that. And he's an actor at the end of the day. So
yeah, and the US is over here clearly dealing with a lot, which I did want to get into what's happening here at home, because I know that we're coming up on a planned vote in the House to release the remaining classified Jeffrey Epstein files held by the US government. And it's interesting because I don't really cover a lot of domestic news, but this one really caught my eye because the files that have been released so far include a message from 2016 in which convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein instructed current US ambassador to Turkey, Tom Barak, to send him pictures with a child. Now, I know that Trump has gone back and forth. Now suddenly he's saying Republicans should support the release of these files because they have nothing to hide. How do you see this whole scandal? Are we likely to find out what actually happened, who, these key names are, and kind of this Jeffrey Epstein black book of sorts that we've become so fixated on but haven't got many answers about?
I'm so fascinated by this side of it, the political side, the blackmail side of it. I don't really like to talk about the salacious dark stuff, but this is the important part, and I think that people are overlooking that. I think that they'll be released, but who knows now, because Trump has now kicked up an investigation by the Southern District of New York by his friend Jay Clayton, who is an absolute imbecile. And so now only parts of the files, if any, can be released because he's got them tied up in his own investigation. So this could be Trump just saying like, yeah, release them. And then they'll release what they can. And then he'll maybe be buying himself time, or he'll be able to say, that's it. That's the end. Or we're doing our own investigation. Or I'm not really sure. Nothing about this feels authentic about this latest. Release them. Like, and if it is authentic, you're having severe mood swings. Like, we need to relax. So it's not good. The whole thing, it just looks like the lady. I've been calling him Lady Macbeth because the lady doth protest way too much. She's like on a manic like cycle or something. Very scary. When all this stuff started coming out, my first reaction was, this is terrifying. Not the sex stuff. The stuff that they're talking about. I mean, I think you mentioned it in your text to me. The speech writing for Ehud Barak. That means that Jeffrey Epstein is directly influencing policy in the most important region in the world. And you're worried about whether someone had sex with who? I don't care about that. Let the other people figure that out. This is stuff that really affects us. Really affects us. I mean, I was watching an interview the other day. It was with an ex-Israeli intelligence officer. And he basically said Jeffrey Epstein had a hand in shaping policy in the Levant and Middle East for decades.
And that's the scary part, right? Because you're like, who is this guy, right? This financier, whatever you want to call him. Clearly, I mean, and
how did he have this access? Look at this access. It's crazy. It's like, hey, my friend, the president of Harvard, could you take the Rothschild around for a tour? I'm like,
yeah.
Who knows these people? Like,
yeah, and as all of that is happening, I think, and even just talking about distractions, I feel like the media here, the mainstream media, they latch on to the salacious stuff, right? To we're going to look at these various details, and they don't look at what you're pointing about, the very important foreign policy angle here, as well as all of Epstein's ties to Mossad. And that question of, okay, if we have a foreign intelligence that is blackmailing our politicians, then what does that mean for our country? What does that mean for our foreign policy decisions? Because if you're getting some of these guys and you're getting them in a position where you have information on them, you have photos, videos, whatever it may be of them in compromising situations, and they don't want that to come out. Sure, they're going to be like, fund whatever you want to fund, right? You want a war in the Middle East? Okay. You want to fund the Iron Dome? Okay, no problem there. And they just go with it. What are your concerns then when that becomes so normalized in our society? And it's like the media doesn't even blink twice. They're just like, okay, we're going to look over here at what Trump had to say or how he was involved.
Exactly. It's like even the Epstein files themselves are a distraction from the Epstein files. Like, guys, we don't, I don't even think Trump is a pedophile. Maybe he had sex with younger women, maybe under 18. I don't know, maybe, but I don't think he's attracted to children. Like, so I mean, even that's like, I'm like, let's just stop with all of that. It's like making it yucky and like almost too dark to even be discussed. It's like almost like trying to push it even further away. I don't know, something like that. I'm really concerned with this. In the same interview I was watching with the ex-Israeli intelligence officer, he says, well, we all know that Bill Clinton was blackmailed by Epstein via Monica Lewinsky and Netanyahu. And we know that that had a lot to do with the creation of Kosovo, which is part of this sort of greater Israel plan and the periphery around it and tertiary around it. But he said, recall the 90s. You might be too young, Rachel, but I remember. Recall the 90s when Ehud Barak and Bill Clinton were meeting with Arafat. It was the closest we had ever gotten to a solution. It was a two-state solution. It was the closest we had ever gotten. And he says that both Bill Clinton and Ehud Barak were blackmailed by different factions within Israel to stop that two-state solution from happening. And shortly after, Arafat died under mysterious circumstances. Now we have Trump trying to institute his peace plan or whatever this gimmick is, but he also has the Abraham Accords he's trying to expand, amongst other things in the region, and the two-state solution, which is put on the table by Saudi and France. And now the Epstein files pop up again. It's very strange. And on the same day that the Epstein files come out, they'll start trickling out, I should say, Trump, for the first time, formally requests a pardon for Bibi Netanyahu. Bibi Netanyahu then waits until a ton of Epstein files are out and then publicly thanks him for the pardon. And that you got to put yourself in the mind of a politician, and then not even just the mind of a politician, an Israeli politician. That's literally a slap in the face. That's what he was pointing out. You're saying, thanks for the pardon. That was so kind of you. While all of this stuff is coming out incriminating him. That's what he's saying. I have a very sneaking suspicion that Trump was I'm going to get myself palantired or something, but I have a very sneaking suspicion Trump was sort of created or molded and put into place by Bibi Netanyahu and Jeffrey Epstein. If you really read these emails, Jeffrey Epstein has an exceptionally close relationship to Trump. I wouldn't say that they're very friendly. It's almost a frenemies sort of thing. You could see the tone difference with Ehud Barak. He's very friendly with Ehud Barak. They're friends. But with Trump, it's more of like a brotherly rivalry sort of thing. They pass girls back and forth, but they've known each other for decades. And they talk about him being a dog, the dog that won't bark. Yeah, it's a Sherlock Holmes reference, but it also kind of this idea that Trump is being handled. Trump's on some sort of leash. Somebody's handling him. There's another email that I think came out yesterday or the day before as people are combing through these and mentioned Jeffrey Epstein mentioned something like, in regards to Trump, I'm awaiting my marching orders. Who's his boss? You know, mm-hmm. So there's a lot more to this than really even meets the eye in the emails. And he talks about MBS sending him presents. So I talked to somebody from the region and I was like, this is an interesting email. He says, MBS sent me a 10. And he was super excited about the 10. And they were joking. He was joking with, Pritzker. Again, you're like, what's the name? Right. And he says, oh, MBS sent me a 10. And Pritzker says, oh, maybe that's like Arabic for I love you or go pound sand. And the girl that I was speaking to, she's a Muslim. She goes, no, 10 is code word for cover up or like alibi or excuse. And even so, I was like, okay, let's say he was speaking literally. Why is MBS sending him a 10? Even if there was a face value. So it's just things like that that are very curious. You see MBS in the emails. Israel has said they want normalization. They're saying they don't want the United States to sell them F-35s without putting normalization on it. So a lot of things are happening right now. It's just, I feel like there's a lot more to this than people are willing to dig into, and people don't care about this stuff's complicated for people that aren't into politics. The stuff's boring. It can be dry. So they want the sex stuff.
Right. They're like, how salacious can it get? And that's what they focus
Right.
on. And yeah, that's the thing is I look at this and I go, and I know there is a certain element too for some people when they hear about it that they almost kind of get overwhelmed and then they go, what, there's nothing I can do to change this, right? So it doesn't concern me. I'm gonna focus back on regular life here. But to me, it's fascinating because it's like if you look at the conversations that are being had, and yeah, the reality that, because they try to just kind of almost dumb Jeffrey Epstein down as this guy who was just obsessed with girls and, getting them to be within this sex trafficking network that was all about him, right? Because that was always the folk. I remember when I initially learned about Epstein, that was the only portion that I heard about was, it was just all about him and like his own personal network. And then you hear about this island and these private jets, and then it just gets more and more and more. But I think it also goes into kind of what you were saying about Donald Trump. And he is the guy that for 2 terms now, he has gotten the American public to believe that he was going to come in, that he was going to be different, that he was going to drain the swamp, whatever campaign promises you want to throw in there. And then he gets in and you're like, oh, okay, he's giving us more of the same. He's not questioning Israel in any way. It seems like there would have to be a reason why he's not doing that, right? Anyone who looks at Gaza and who goes, oh, wow, it looks like there's a genocide going on there. It looks like the U.S. is supporting that fully. And if you're the president of the United States, he's acting as though he has no power to do anything about that. And even is making it even worse with this grand plan for Gaza that is just going to exterminate the Palestinians from their land. So where does that leave us when it comes to kind of where things go from here? And do you think that we will find out all of the information, all that there is to know about what Epstein was fully involved in?
Well, the first thing, I think it's important, even if people think it's boring and they want to go back and put their head in the sand or whatever. I mean, there are strange people that read our posts and read and watch our shows, and sometimes they end up in the hands of Marjorie Taylor Greene or the Russian ambassador to the UN, and then that ends up in the hands of Putin. You never know like where this stuff is going to end up or who's missing out on what information. So I think it's important to tease all this stuff out and get it out in this sort of digestible way. It's actually incredibly intriguing if you pretend it's like Game of Thrones. It's like a Game of Thrones episode. Seriously, it's more drama than like a telenovela. But in terms of getting everything out there, I don't know. Now we have this investigation in the Southern District that might gum things up. They've been sitting on these files for I don't know how long. Does somebody have access to delete any? I don't know how this stuff works, or chain of custody or anything like that. A lot of these people are dead, some of them under very weird circumstances. So, I don't know that we'll ever have the full story, but I think that that the disclosure is important. I think it's terrifying. I think people need to know what they're really dealing with. I think that a really great example, you talked about how he pretends he's kind of like, well, I can't do anything about the genocide in Gaza. He told everybody at his speech at the Republican he wasn't there. He did it by video to Republican Jewish Coalition. And he said, I'm the one who ripped up the JCPOA. I'm the one who recognized the Golan Heights. I'm the one who moved the capital. He said, nobody else would have done that. And then we got to bomb Iran. He is telling us now that he doesn't have to worry about re-election or staying in office. Everything he did in the first term was to precipitate this, going to war with Iran for Israel. He said himself, he didn't even know what the hell the Golan Heights were until the Adelsons told him about them. So this isn't something that he was like, I got to get those Golan Heights. No, this is something that he's been told he has to do in order for what? For somebody's goal. These are the means to an end. And now he's letting us know that they were all means to an end. And he can't do anything about Gaza. I mean, maybe he could, but he can't, So that's why it's easy for him to act like, well, ho-hum, I can't really do anything. My hands are tied. And they are, in a way.
Yeah, and then now he's playing this game of, oh yeah, release the files. We have
That's
nothing to
scary.
hide. And
I
I'm
gotta
like,
I kind of
yeah.
like dig a little bit because that's scaring me. It's like, what have you done? Like, what did you do
What is
to
it? What?
what did you do to those files?
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing is when they start talking about releasing them, I'm like, it's never it almost reminds me of the, well, I guess a different version of the CIA torture report where it's like we never got the full version of that. We got a very heavily redacted version and then they just kind of kicked the can down the road until people stopped talking about it. But in the case of Trump, that is the really interesting thing. The last thing I want to bring up, because I know that the MAGA base, they care about these Epstein files, right? They care about this, all of these different politicians that are involved, whether that, however much that includes Trump, we'll see. But when it comes down to the MAGA base and how much they are going to continue to push for these files to be released and for there to be some resolution there, how do you see that?
Well, the files themselves have already created a huge schism, which Trump further created by going after Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene. I think it's important to note that there were 4 Republicans that were going to put their names on the petition. Well, they already did. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Massie, Nancy Mace, Lauren Boebert. Lauren Boebert was pulled into the Situation Room where they tried to convince her to remove her signature. She refused. Nancy Mace, they also pulled into the office. I don't think the Situation Room's not that serious, but they tried to convince her too. These women, for obvious reasons, neither of them can remove their signatures from this petition because Laura Boebert was a QAnon person. So she can't be against saving the children. And Nancy Mace is a sexual assault / women's rights platform. She can't go against this. Plus, she did that whole fiasco where she cried during the reading and ran out of the house or whatever. So the last 2 are Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene. He knows that he can't get them to change their votes, so let's just attack them. And referring back to our just before this, we were like, what did you do with those files? So we have him splitting the party in half and now demanding for the files to get released. It's very sus and scary. I think it's very scary. He's an animal in a corner and he's acting completely irrationally. I don't know. I think that we have a right to know. That's where I'm at with this. I don't want these people around me. I don't want these people leading me. And the fact that they would even say, why are you worried about this stuff? Tells me that you guys have normalized this to a point in your lives. Like, I don't want you anywhere near the Capitol. It's just crazy. So I think that it's important. And it's part of this whole idea of getting our country back on track. You're not going to be able to do that without teasing all of this out and cleaning it up. It's part of it. It's in our fabric now. It's been around for almost 40 years.
Yeah. It's very telling when they start going, oh yeah, just release the files. I'm like, okay, I feel like that's setting it up to be like, I told you there was nothing there. And then we go, okay, where are the real files? Because
yes.
they never.
Maybe they'll rickroll us again like they did the last time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, gosh. And it hasn't even been 1 year. And so we have not even been one whole year of Trump's second term. And I'm going, and so much has happened. But as always, I really appreciate you taking the time to join me to break down all of the latest here. Sarah Bils, an independent journalist, U.S. Navy veteran, and co-founder of DD Geopolitics. Thank you so much for your time and insight.
Thank you for having me.
If anything in this video resonated with you, be sure to like it, share it with your friends, leave a comment, and as always, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to keep up with all of my work, make sure that you're subscribed to my page on Substack. That's rachelblevins.substack.com. That's where you'll find ad-free videos and new weekly episodes of my exclusive series for paid subscribers called Sanctioned. You can also check out Sanctioned over on my page on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Rachel Blevins. As always, thank y'all so much for all of your support, and I'll see you next time.